I continue my series on the 36 decans of the zodiac today with Cancer 3, the last decan of Cancer. Cancer is a water sign, it's ruled by the moon, and it's a cardinal sign, so it likes to start things. I went in depth about the meaning of Cancer in the first series on Cancer 1. I'll drop a link to that below. But what differentiates this decan from the other two decans in Cancer is the planets that rule this deck. And we're going to see that it's the moon and Jupiter, in addition to the moon ruling the sign. So we have moon, Jupiter. So we have lots of nurturing energy that's expanded and expansive and optimistic. So think of that mom who offers you that third piece of cake after you've already had two pieces of cake and says, "No, honey, eat it, eat it." That's the quality of this decan. We're going to see that people who have points or planets in this decan oftentimes can grow up with a little bit of privilege and abundance. And then what do they do with that? A couple of examples are Bill Gates and Lord Byron, the poet. We'll look at the tarot cards that are associated with it, this decan, as well as talk about what Agrippa, an ancient wisdom figure, said about this decan. There's a lot to explore. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, like and subscribe. It helps people find my content. So, Cancer 3. We've got Moon, Jupiter, and Moon is really the mama energy of nurturing, creating safe spaces for emotions to be expressed, wanting to tend to and help things grow in the world. So there's this real energy of that. If you think about Cancer being a cardinal sign, it's active. So there's this active energy of wanting to nurture things with this decan. And then we throw in Jupiter, who under the Greek pantheon was Zeus, and has this energy of abundance and optimism, also faith can be part of the energy of Jupiter, wanting to help, wanting to bestow goodness on other people is the vibe of the Jupiter energy. So when we put those planets together, we can sometimes almost get too much of a good thing. We can see this expressed in the tarot cards that are associated with this decan. First, I'm going to show you the Thoth deck because I like the way it uses language. It has words at the bottom of the cards to describe them. And when you compare the Thoth card for Cancer 2, which is the Three of Cups, to the Thoth card for Cancer 3, which is the Four of Cups, you really see where we've moved from a moment of abundance, which is the middle part of Cancer, if you can see that. We see the lovely flowing energy of water. There's a dynamic quality. The water is calm. It feels beautiful. And the card is called Abundance. And then when we get to the Four of Cups, look, we have luxury, right? So what's the difference between having an abundance of things and having almost too much? And we see the stagnant quality of the Four of Cups. The water looks a little gray. It's not as bright as in the three, and the water underneath is troubled. The Four Cups are almost too heavy. As Crowley describes in his book associated with these tarot cards, there's almost I don't think he uses the word decadence, but it's something like that, a decadent quality where there's a decay that's beginning to happen because you've almost got too much. We see this also with I love as well the Rider-Waite images associated with this decan. Here we see the Three of Cups, three beautiful young maidens in harmonious embrace. They're having a great time, but there's a dynamic quality to the card. And water wants dynamic energy. It wants to move and flow. And Cancer's a water sign, right? So here the water is flowing. Everybody's happy. Here we see the stagnant quality of the Four of Cups. If you think numerology, from the standpoint of numerology, the number 3 has a dynamic quality. When we get to the number 4, we get to the square, which contains things. It's the structure, it's stagnant. Water doesn't like to be stagnant, it wants to move and flow. And so here we see in the image of the Four of Cups a young man sitting under a tree. He's got three cups before him. He's being offered a third, and he's crossing his arms. He's got a look of kind of on his face. And so, and there's a heaviness to this card. So we do get this quality of this is enough, or I'm not sure I want more, which can happen, right, with that Four of Cups. There's also, just to throw in one other person's writing on this Four of Cups energy, there's an astrologer and a Jungian analyst. She's both. Her name is Liz Green. She's very famous. She's written multiple books, and she created the mythic tarot deck, which I really like as well because she uses ancient Greek myths to tell the stories in the cards. And she describes fours, or the number, the fours in the tarot deck as follows. The focus of the fours in every suit is, quote, divine discontent, close quote. Although everything feels happy and rewarding, there is doubt and suspicion. So I like this quote because it really fits with the example that I'm going to use. Lord Byron, who was a famous romantic poet, but some of his poetry sort of veered into existential angst and kind of almost like he didn't know what to do with himself because he had so much and he didn't feel like he fit with the people in his wealthy class. But at the same time, he was a guy who had so much money that he went and traveled a lot and he was kind of known. I'm not going to use, well, I have to use the word playboy because I can't think of another word, but he had this romantic longing quality. And I'm not sure he was a playboy, but he was certainly somebody who was out there spending a lot of money and almost getting too much pleasure and then feeling the dissatisfaction you can feel when you get that hangover because you've drank too much, or you feel a little sick and like you don't want any more food after you've had so many great meals that it's kind of like lost its appeal and its joy. And so this decan can have a little bit of that vibe to it. But, and also, as Austin Coppock notes in his class on the decans, which I took, a very long class, but wonderful if you get a chance to purchase it. It's on his website. People with planets in this decan can be artists or poets, people who are supported and have enough money so that they can pursue these dreams or play with ideas and have the time, almost have so much time on their hands that they can um, go ahead and create art without regard to whether or not it is going to be received or whether or not they're going to be able to make money off of it. And I think that's really true from some clients that I've known that have significant planets in this decan as well. They perhaps have enough money or born to privilege and then can pursue something different, something out of the ordinary. We also see that, I'm going to go ahead and just switch to the examples part of this talk. We also see that with Bill Gates. So Bill Gates has his rising degree in this decan. Bill Gates was born the son of his dad was a lawyer. I can't remember what his mom did, but he went to, I believe, a prep school. That's where in his high school years he developed, first started working with computers. He's older than I am. And he was able to work with computers. And I remember they really didn't even exist, right? The only really wealthy people had access to sort of the material resources to be able to do the learning he was able to do to be able to develop the technology that he ultimately developed. And he started that in high school. And then he went on to Harvard, right? He got into Harvard because he had gone to this great prep school, and then he was able to quit when he decided I'm going to pursue a career in trying to develop and take this computer I developed and sell it and create a business. He was not worried about whether or not he was going to be able to support himself from that innovation that he had created. He could just go out and see if he was able to do it or not because he had enough wealth, personal wealth from his family. And then, as I said already, Lord Byron had his moon in this decan of Cancer. He was a Cancer rising. I believe his ascendant was in the first decan. And Lord Byron, in addition to, he had a title and he had all this wealth, he was able to travel and become a poet. But what's also interesting about him is, remember how I said Liz Green talked about the number four and the Four of Cups having to do with divine discontent? That comes through in Lord Byron's poetry, that he, while he had all this wealth and this privilege, he kind of bemoaned the fact that he grew up within this bubble of money and could not escape it. And he had some existential angst around that, and his poetry reflects it. There's a poem in particular called Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, where he reflects on the emptiness of privilege and the search for fulfillment beyond material wealth and social status. And his here's a quote from somebody who was writing about this. His personal discontent and longing for freedom are mirrored by the heroes that he created in his writing, who are often brooding, rebellious, and deeply introspective. So that's the vibe of Cancer 3. Now, one last thing, or a couple last things, both of which are super interesting to me. The first is both Lord Byron and Bill Gates have Jupiter Pluto contacts in their chart, which is also a sign of wealth because Pluto is the god of the underworld, but he's also the god of the cornucopia of wealth. And when he's with Jupiter, especially in a positive aspect, it can often lead to somebody having great wealth in their lifetime. Bill Gates has Jupiter conjunct Pluto, and Lord Byron has Pluto trine his Jupiter. That's a really nice flowing energy. So that's interesting. The last thing I want to mention is the shadow side of this decan. Besides the discontent that we talked about with Lord Byron, sometimes people who have Saturn or Mars, the two difficult planets in this decan, may struggle with wealth particularly when they're young. Maybe they grow up in poverty, and also they can still eventually come to poverty, but maybe then they struggle with questions about how to best use their money in a way that is, they can tend toward wanting to be generous with their fortune and wanting to help other people, but at the same time may struggle with giving away too much or enabling other people, over mothering people, you could say. So, for example, I have a client who is a Scorpio rising with Mars in the third decan. So Mars rules their chart, right? Mars is in the third decan of Cancer. And there's someone who grew up in poverty, but later in life came into money and then found themselves helping, came to me to talk about the ways in which they found themselves enabling siblings in their family that had substance abuse problems, purchasing a house for one of the siblings. Of course, that just perpetuating or enabling them to continue in their substance abuse. And then also just giving a lot of money away to another one. So having to struggle, the shadow side, if you have a more difficult planet here, might be having to learn some lessons about what to do with that excess of wealth and abundance, and learn some lessons about that perhaps over mothering or giving away too much out of a sense of a desire to help, certainly, but perhaps also rooted in some of the difficulties that can happen when somebody grows up with less, but then comes into money again later in life. So those are just a few ideas about the decans. Please do let me know if you have an important planet or point in this part of your chart. You can always drop a comment. We can have a little chat. I love to hear people's stories. So have a great day, and I'll see you when I do Leo 1 in about 10 days. Thanks.